All right, what's up, guys? We are here today to do a review on the French and Indian War. You'll see me go through. I have this chart that I drew up on the board that I didn't give you. Well, we're going to go ahead and go through this today. Second period, because of the hurricane, we didn't get quite to this between 9/11 lesson and the hurricane discussion we had on that. But I'm going to be looking at the camera. I'm going to be looking at this to fill it out to make sure that you have the information as well. So just to review, the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763, one of the most important wars fought in the United States, or what will become the United States, because it will become the United States due to the French and Indian War. Definitely one of the major causes of the American Revolution. And we know, just as a review, there's a lot of tensions between the colonists and England prior to. You had, First Great Awakening coming through. Yeah, the Enlightenment movement hitting. And let's not forget that we also have mercantilism with the Dominion of New England, the Molasses Act, 1733. So things are starting to crest a little bit on with tensions between them. But the French and Indian War at the end is really the last straw. So let's look at some causes of the French and Indian War. And again, just a note, this is for my AP class. This is how I like to teach it. If you are in another AP class using this, some of the information may be a little bit different than what your teacher emphasized versus what I teach. I have a photo of George Washington portrait up there. And so I'm obviously a big fan of George Washington, and I teach that he started the war. So first number one cause is going to be French colonization. Obviously, when you look at French colonization, the French colonized for fur. Worth a lot of money. The British want it, they need it, and they want to exploit it. The only way to get it, well, go to war with the country that has it. So you have French colonization. There's also four wars that war, Queen Anne's War, the War of Jenks Ear, and then the French and Indian War, where the French just take the L's left and right. It's a common theme. Their revolution was an L for the country. So there's just always French L's, and those four wars, again, King William's War, Queen Anne's War, War of Jenks Ear, and then the French and Indian War. And I think the other one is King George's War. I could be wrong on that. But each one of those wars happens. They have different names in America. They're all over something that's going on in Europe, either a change of a crown. I know one's the Austrian secession. That's world history. I'm not going to get into that, but that's the first cause, is the French colonization plus the wars and the L's that they are catching. So that's going to be your first cause. Okay. Now that's going to lead us to the French and Indian War, because the colonists are fighting on behalf of the British. The British army is staying put in Europe. They're relying on the English colonies to fight, which means if you were fighting in class, or if you had a fight at school, you're looking to get something out of that. Okay. And unfortunately for the colonists, they're promised the world, but they're really not getting anything at all. All right. Now, the second main cause of the French and Indian War is my man George, GW. I like to call him the GOAT, but unfortunately, I can't draw a goat too well, but I'll do it anyway up here. I think they have horns. This actually looks like a really good donkey. I'm going to have to show you. That would be a donkey, which is, well, we'll just stick with that. So George Washington decides that he's the head of a Virginia land speculation company that's up in the West Virginia part, and they're going to go look to see if they can get some more land, scope it out, speculate it. They're going to sell it. That's what land speculation is: mapping it out, selling it at a cost, making a profit. That's how his family's going to make money. And so he is heading to the northern, Pennsylvania, where he runs into a French regiment, is what I'm going to call it, and they get into a fight. And it is a nasty battle, and George Washington happens to kill the general of the general in that area, in that French-controlled area. Well, George Washington, being a damn good American, decides that he is going to sign a treaty or a peace agreement that allows him and his men to go free. The only problem is he has to admit that he assassinated a French general. So he admits that he assassinated this French general, and anytime that you see an assassination, spoiler alert, it's going to lead to a war, if not a world war. World War II, World War I, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And so anytime you have an assassination, it's going to lead to a war. Bob Marley's attempted assassinations may or may not have led to a war. Who knows? We'll find out. So Washington signs this agreement, and now all of a sudden you have war. And that is at Fort Duquesne. He backs out. They create Fort Necessity. They don't go away. They stay there. Now, again, at the same time in Europe, this is known as the 7 Years' War. And it's really the unofficial First World War. Everybody's involved, including the American colonists, the natives, the French, the Spanish, Prussia. I mean, everybody's involved here. Okay? And those are going to be the two main causes for the French and Indian War. Okay? I don't think that there is anything else. Let's see. Can't pause this, so I'm going to keep it as is. I'll be right back. Maybe I can edit it later. Just looking up. Here it is. It's actually behind my desk. Looking for my notebook. Just want to make sure I hit them all correctly. All right, so like I said, you have the 7 Years' War. It's going to be Britain, Prussia versus France, Spain, Austria, and Russia. Okay, and this is why the British are going to be reliant on the colonists to fight the French and Indian War in America, because they have to fight the 7 Years' War in Europe. Okay, so let's move to some battles here. First off, you have the Battle of Fort Duquesne, and yes, this is spelt correctly. Okay, so you have the Battle of Fort Duquesne. The Battle of Fort Duquesne is going to be very, very significant, because you have something that happens there known as Braddock's Blunder. Now, in Europe, fighting style was normally straight line, and you fire, duck, guys behind you fire, you reload, they get up, they fire. An open field warfare is much simpler than guerrilla warfare that we are going to see in the French and Indian War. And with the guerrilla warfare that we're going to see, or the warfare that is being done outside of the warfare that is being done not on an open field in all of these French fur forts and in the woods, you can't do that. Okay, and these generals that are being sent over to command over the to command over the colonists, they're not going to be very good at guerrilla warfare. They're used to that. That's why the Plains of Abraham are going to be the last of the Battle of Quebec. It's an open field. I mean, that's where you're going to really see this stuff. But the British really, the turning point for them is they start sending younger generals over. I think William Pitt was the prime minister who's going to send more generals over that are going to be a lot more respondent to the type of warfare that is needed in order to defeat the natives and the French. Okay, but Fort Duquesne is also known as Braddock's Blunder, and I think it's Edward Braddock. Could be wrong on that, but Edward Braddock decides that they're just not his strategy is not very good, and they get defeated pretty handedly. And there were a lot of Americans that saw this as, well, the British are losing and we're helping them fight, but we might be able to beat them. And so that's what you start to see in this war. It's a common theme where the colonists are fighting, and they're not getting much out of this, and they're realizing that the British can be defeated. They're not as invincible, and we'll talk about the effects here in a little bit. Again, you had Fort Necessity. That was created by Washington. That's not the biggest one. Then the turning point, or I think it's the turning point or the end, is going to be the Battle of Quebec. Right now, these battles aren't the most significant battles in American history. They're battles in this French and Indian War, and again, the battles you really don't need to necessarily know. It's just Braddock's blunder is a big one that you need to know at Fort Duquesne. Now, all of these battles are, again, not extremely significant. You just need to make sure that you know the colonists are the ones, the English colonists are the ones that are putting their neck out on the line. They're the ones that are fighting. They're the ones that are watching their friends die next to them for the glory of getting the French kicked out and getting that land and getting the fur trade, and what they're going to get in return is a line that won't allow them to go get the fur. Okay, so if you look at the chart, all right, we have, I know it's hard to see because of the back of it, but you have your two causes here. You have your battles right here, Duquesne with Braddock's blunder, Fort Necessity, and the Battle of Quebec. Now we need to talk about some events during it, because there are extremely important events during it. The first one is going to be the Albany Congress. That's 1754. Okay, now you notice the date, and that's where you see this guy come in. All right, this was originally drawn by Benjamin Franklin to promote people coming together for the Albany Congress. Okay, now the Albany Congress was a meeting that took place originally with the original intent to get the Iroquois on to fight on behalf of the British, which I believe that they do because their rival, the Hurons, were going to fight on behalf of the French. But Benjamin Franklin decides he's going to take a greater risk, and he's actually going to send a letter to the king to request greater home rule. Now, we've talked about home rule in class, the ability for them to rule and self-govern themselves. That is not going to go over so well with the king. But this is one of the examples of the United States, or what will become the United States, asking for greater independence and more independence. Okay. And that's why the Albany Congress is kind of the start of period three, 1754 to 1800. It's all about that American experiment, starting at the Albany Congress, asking for greater home rule, going through the causes of the American Revolution, eventually getting to the American Revolution, winning their independence, going through two types of government, two presidents, and then a peaceful transition of power with the third president. It all really starts with that Albany Congress asking for more rule. Now, the last thing is Pontiac Rebellion. And Pontiac's Rebellion is at the end of the war. That's 1763. One of the primary effects of the war is that the French are no longer a world power. They lose. They've lost 4 wars prior to this. And by the way, backing up, the 4 wars were King William's War, Queen Anne's War, King George's War, and then the French and Indian War. And then you had the War of Jenks Ear, which is a pretty cool one. I would Google that if you ever get a chance to research that. But all of these wars are over something else. Okay, Spanish secession, Austrian secession, 7 years, same thing. Okay, so Pontiac's Rebellion, Chief Pontiac is a member, I can't remember the tribe off of the top of my head, and the French are leaving, they lose the war, and they go to the Pontiac, and this Chief Pontiac, and they say, you know what they're going to do, they're going to take your land, you need to defend yourself. And with the French leaving, they have no more allies, so Pontiac begins these raids in western Pennsylvania and in the brand new Ohio River Valley that the English just won. And he starts these raids, and they're violent. He's scalping. If you've ever seen Inglourious Bastards, that's where they kill and then they scalp the skull. And this scares the colonists very much. And the British, they don't really know how to deal with it, to be honest. So they deal with it the best way they know how. Smallpox lace blankets. And this is kind of the first example of biological warfare in the United States. They hand Chief Pontiac the smallpox lace blankets in the winter, And that kind of ends Pontiac's Rebellion. Now, why is Pontiac's Rebellion important? Simple. The United States realizes, or the British Crown realizes, that they do no longer have, they can't protect them. And so that's going to be a problem. All right, so let's look at some of the effects of the war here. All right, first off, number one, the French are gone. No more world power. And actually, this is where you see the Arcadians and the French are actually sent down to New Orleans. Basically, you have two locations now where you had a massive French trading post map. It's in your textbook in chapter 6. And at the end of this war, they are located in New Orleans or Haiti. Okay, so they are gone as a world power. Number two, Britain has the naval power. So now the British have the naval power. Okay. And as the British are now the naval power, we will learn later on that Albert T. Mahan's The Influence of Sea Power Upon History is accurate. If you have the best navy and you rule the seas, you are the dominant power, and that's where England is now. England defeated the Spanish Armada, England has defeated the French, and now all of a sudden England is the dominant power. Number three, because the colonists are fighting this war, they're gaining confidence. Much like all of you, after you write your third DBQ, you'll gain confidence. You'll feel a little bit better about your DBQs. After the second test, you'll feel a little better about it. You're going to gain confidence. The more and more you do things, the more confidence you gain. And that's what's going to happen with the colonists. They gain fighting experience. They gain fighting confidence, and they know that the British can be defeated. And that takes me to number 4. They realize that the British are not invincible. And the way that they realize that is due to Braddock's blunder. Okay? They really weren't having much success until you put these young generals in. So the British are no longer going to be invincible, and that's going to lead to a big problem for them when it comes to the American Revolution, because we're not scared, or those fighting were not scared. Okay. Number 5, the British increase their territory, which leads to Pontiac's Rebellion, and also allows the United States, once they secede and successfully defeat them, to getting a lot more territory. Now, all of a sudden, the British have to the Mississippi River, essentially, and the United States wants to head out west, and this leads to a common example of heading out west. And every time that we head out west, we see two commonalities. One, the Americans are going to be pushed even further, and 2, slavery is going with it. Except in the Ohio River Valley, because slavery is going to be banned by the Northwest Ordinance. Okay, this is going to link the colonies. That's the 6th effect. It's going to link them, much like the First Great Awakening. They start realizing that they're not that different, much like the maps that I showed you with the melting pot. They realize they're not that much different. So this is going to link the colonies to, if you can imagine, in the backwoods of Pennsylvania, them filming them around a fire, talking about their lives and their differences, and they're realizing it's not that much different. Okay. Number 7, the natives are done right now, for now. Okay. The natives, they're done. They have no more allies. They're going to continue to fight the United States, and even the ones that fight on behalf of the United States or are friendly with the United States government, they're eventually going to be kicked out in the 1830s, 1832, Trail of Tears, 1838, Trail of Tears, with the Indian Removal Act in the 1830s. And obviously, westward migration, that's going to be huge, especially when you look forward with Manifest Destiny. But westward migration is another one of those. We're land hungry. We want to go get that land, and we can't because of the Proclamation Line. And that's the end of the French and Indian War, is the Proclamation Line. Essentially, what the Proclamation Line is going to do is it's drawn right inside along the Appalachian Mountains to prevent the United States colonists or the English colonists from heading out west due to the proclamation line. And that's the French and Indian War. And what you're going to see is the main effect, which we'll talk about, is going to be taxes, because war is expensive and you have to pay for it somehow. And taxes and proclamation line, gaining independence or gaining valuable fighting experience, leadership experience, realizing that Braddock's blunder, the British are not invincible and you will be able to beat them. The Great Awakening, the Enlightenment, all of these are going to be causes leading into the American Revolution. But without the French and Indian War, who knows what would have happened. That's it. Tarasco's Apush class. I'm out and I'm going home. I hope you guys enjoy your day off. And I will see you on Thursday. Peace.